Deutsche Bank says it will no longer do business with the president or any of his companies. You'll recall, of course, that Germany's largest bank was a lifeline for Donald Trump after a series of bankruptcies in the 1990s, when other financial institutions deemed him too risky. According to the New York Times, Deutsche has lent Donald Trump and his organisation more than $2.5 billion over the years. This loss of funding, it's brutal for the Trump organisation, which has been built on debt. The clearest sign yet, the money faucet feeding the Trump empire is being rapidly shut off or shut down. Social media has banned, for example, you've got Twitter, Facebook, all cutting off the megaphone that's fueled the rise. E-commerce, you've got the loss of Stripe, which has stopped processing payments, the campaign. Shopify, closing the Trump organization's stores, payment system. And the key business partners, the PGA, has pulled a major golf tournament from Trump Bedminster golf course. As for the banks, well, there you are. The pipeline there closed down. Signatures closed off Trump's personal accounts, and now Deutsche won't lend any money. By the way, if you think, we've got debts, Trump owes $340 million, and that's due in 2 years' time, while the investigations continue. David Enrich is with me, the business investigations editor at the New York Times. How good to have you, sir. You also wrote the book Dark Towers, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump and an Epic Tale of Destruction. Excellent to have you, sir. Now, let me apologise in advance. If the DOJ news conference begins, then I will have to be somewhat impolite and interrupt you so that we can go to it. So do forgive me in that case. Now back to Deutsche. Once again, day late, dollar short. They've decided to do this like all of the rats leaving the sinking ship, but they've done it late.
Well, they've certainly come to this realization that Trump is toxic for their brand, I think a little bit belatedly. And, this has been a 20-year journey for Deutsche Bank, which has been, as you mentioned, the only mainstream financial institution willing to do business with him. And they are finally essentially pulling the plug on that relationship with one big caveat, which is that he still owes the bank well over $300 million that's due in the next few years. And they are fully expecting to get that money paid back. So they're certainly going to be keeping his accounts open and the phones being answered there until that money gets repaid. But beyond that, I think there certainly will not be any more loans going from Deutsche Bank to Donald Trump.
Will they get that money back, do you think?
It's a good question. I mean, if Trump defaults on those loans, Deutsche Bank has the right to pursue his personal assets. And so that's a pretty big deterrent to Trump defaulting. On the other hand, history has shown time and time again with Trump that he views litigation and the court system as a way to kind of protract these business disputes and avoid paying 100 cents on the dollar. And so I think it's anyone's guess. Certainly, as you said, his business empire is really, if not crumbling, then certainly under a lot of stress. And it's even more stressful because in the past couple of weeks, he has become really radioactive, I think, even in the United States. And so it's going to be much harder for him to come up with the $300+ million to repay those debts when they're due.
His business empire was never as profitable or good or gold-plated as he ever said it was. And that said, is it right, though, that people like Shopify should close down things like the Trump organization's ability to sell and those sort of things?
I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, that's not really my position to say one way or the other. I think it's understandable in the sense that all of these companies, whether it's Shopify or Twitter or Deutsche Bank now, they're just getting tremendous criticism and face the very real prospect that their brands are permanently tarnished by their association with the president. And look, these are private companies. They have the right to run their businesses as they see fit. And the same way Trump has the right to run his business as he sees fit. And so from a business perspective, I do understand why they are severing ties. I'm sure Trump sees it as unfair, though.
As the New York Times did when it did that excellent reporting on the Trump finances and the way in which the money has basically been squandered and lost, that his inheritance that he got from his father in some shape or form has been squandered and lost. The golf courses, for example, which lose money. Is it a realistic How realistic is it that he goes bankrupt in the next 3 years?
Well, it depends what you mean by goes bankrupt. I mean, I think there's definitely always a real possibility with Trump that he will use the American bankruptcy laws to reorganize his business and to wriggle out of some of his debts. He's done that in the past with his casinos in Atlantic City, and I think it's obviously that itself would further tarnish the Trump brand. On the other hand, he has a very, very acute debt crisis that is going to be looming over him for the next several years. And I'm not quite sure how he gets out of that. On the other hand, all it takes is him either finding a buyer to purchase some of his assets or a cash infusion from some other investors or some other country. And one thing with Trump is that we've learned over the past 5 years to never kind of fully think that you've counted the guy out, because he does often find a way, for better or for worse, to prolong a situation and not make it nearly as clean and simple as we might have thought.
David Enrich. David, thank you for joining us there. David Enrich from the New York Times.